Epic has just done a talk with MustardPlays on all the different issues surrounding moderation inside the ecosystem in Fortnite Creative and UEFN. And in this video, I'm going to break down the entire stream. There's a lot of things cleared up, like IP theft or AI, and a few things that are a little bit, questionable. So we'll break it all down. And there's also some cool things announced as well. So let's just get to it. Now, the first question that was asked was, how much of moderation is automated?
It's funny, this question comes up a lot, and I feel like we've answered it a few times, but nobody believes me. So I'll say it again, which is that like a human reviews every single island that gets published into Fortnite. We have automated systems that help with all that. Obviously, like we have millions of assets uploaded every day. We use machine learning to sort of prioritize where human eyeballs go on the asset side, and then we review everything within the context of the island. So that means that a moderator or a team of moderators, in the case of a multiplayer island, will go in, they'll spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 or 15 minutes probably going through playing the island, making sure that it functions and that it doesn't break any of our island creator rules. So the answer is a mix of both, but a human is involved in everything before it gets live.
So a lot of people in the community still believe that moderation in Fortnite is completely automated, and to be honest, I also did think that, but Epic has reiterated over time that most of it is automated, but there is still at least one human looking at every single map that gets published into Fortnite, and each person looks at the map for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, so the automated system, we'll surface things we have a custom moderation tool called Badger, which we built ourselves to sort of facilitate the moderation of everything. These are the ones that we think deserve heavier scrutiny, and we'll have moderators review those, outside of the island, and then they will go in looking at, let's say, a plain white box, outside of an island is like, yeah, that's obviously there's nothing there. But within the context of the island, they can be arranged in certain ways that can be valid as the most sort of basic example. So that's why we sort of use a mix of both, because you can't rely solely on automation for that sort of enforcement.
So yeah, Epic makes a very good point here. You kind of have to have both to have the best results. Make it all humans and the humans will get bored, I guess. And if you make it all AI, the AI will be inaccurate and it will probably not work very well. The next question that came up was, how many moderators are there? And how many islands are submitted every day?
Of moderators, because the truth is that it's going to fluctuate based on volume. We see about 4,000 or so islands a day right now. It really, it varies based on seasonality and all sorts of things like that nature. So when we think about staffing, it's really about how do we right size our moderation force for the amount of volume that we're seeing across everything. So what that looks like for island creators is, our goal is to get to every island that is submitted in 3 hours or less from a moderation perspective for UEFN. And there are times where we're not able to meet that goal, but the overwhelming majority of the time, we're well within 3 hours per island. So
I think that's the important bit, is that it's rather than solving for the number of people, we're trying to solve for a reasonable turnaround, like an SLA that creators can trust. When we review it, like when a bunch of us sit with Dan and the team and go, how did we do on a season launch or something like that? Generally, like what we look at is how long did it take for an update to an island to go through.
So we never actually got a real answer on how many moderators there are, but what Epic did say is that it varies, I guess. So there's about 4,000 islands that get submitted every single day. And I think a majority of those are updates to islands. And like he said, it varies on seasonality. So people will probably be uploading more islands at the start and end of Fortnite seasons rather than in the middle or at the end. So they change the size of the mod team depending on how much workload there is. They also aim to have islands reviewed within 3 hours or less, but like they said, there are some exceptions to that limit. In the end, Epic's goal is just having a good reasonable turnaround on reviewing islands. The next question that came up, and it's one that I've always wondered, do moderators see the changes done to the island?
We don't have like a strict change log in the way that you sort of just described it, but I think there are reasons that we would. Like, there are pros and cons to an approach like that, right, before. So just because like an island has only added, like, oh, they've added 10 things, to a previously approved island, and you look at those 10 things and you would say like, oh yeah, there doesn't look like there's anything here. But if there are ways that you can place anything within an island that would make it violative. So we can't just sort of review the assets independently of the island. So there is still an island review process. What we try to do, though, and we've made some recent improvements here already, and we have some more on the horizon, is like, how do we look to like historical moderation decisions and carry those forward so that we're not sort of relitigating every single piece of content if we know it's not violative. So like going back to the asset upload example, if the same asset has been uploaded, let's say 100 times, and 100 times moderators have said like, yep, that looks good, and we should just stop looking at that asset unless we've had another change to our rule.
So Epic doesn't necessarily look at every single change done to every single island. What they do is that they look at historical data. Like, for example, if this asset's usually allowed, they'll just allow it and just ignore it. But if they make changes to the algorithm or whatever, the rules, usually those assets will probably get re-flagged.
And then looking forward, one of the things that I know people are particularly focused on is things like, I've submitted this thumbnail 8 times, like the same exact thumbnail has gone through moderation 8 times, and then on the 9th time I got rejected. Like, what happened there? And the answer is, like, this is really a human, like, humans make mistakes, humans will disagree on things, but what we want to do is, like, when we've reached a consensus and we have like a strong chain of the same positive decision, we're working to instill ways to sort of like carry that decision forward, so that if a new moderator says like, actually no, I think this is violative, it automatically gets escalated and re-reviewed so that it's not just rejected outright. So I think that's sort of the example of, it's a little bit faster to go through for an update versus a net new island, but maybe not as much as you might expect because of that. We're still doing that in-game island playthrough, but what we want to do is make it so that there are as few surprises as possible when you're doing an island update if your stuff has already been approved a handful of times before.
So basically what Epic's saying here is that humans are flawed and humans make mistakes, which is very true. Some changes, like for example, the example he used, the thumbnail being uploaded 10 times, with the last time, that's the time it only gets flagged. That's usually due to apparently humans and their subjective view on what's being uploaded, and if they think it's rule breaking or not. And then if there's a lot of historical evidence suggesting that that thing could be positive, they review it and check if it's actually not good. The next question Mustard brought up was, do moderators have training to help ensure consistency, and what does that look like? How do you have consistency?
Our team is distributed around the world, and they are reviewing a lot of content, and so our approach is basically one, yes, we have basic sort of training. Here's how the tools work. Here are the rules and guidelines you need to be aware of. We have integrated like reference guides into our moderation tools, so that if they are looking at something and they're thinking, oh, that's not quite right, like what is this, like when am I supposed to apply the misleading tag, they can pull up documentation that has like, here's the definition, here's exactly what would fall under this, here are some examples of what would be allowed, here are examples of what's not allowed, and they can reference all that as they're going through. That being said, like, we do monitor and review their performance both on an individual level and then how they're doing compared, like how individual policies and tags are being applied. So if we see things going sort of too far out of whack in any direction, like for a moderator, we can sit them down and retrain them. And if we think it's a documentation problem, then we'll revisit our documentation. And certainly if we think it's a policy problem, then we'll look at our public external guidelines and be like, it doesn't seem like creators are really understanding what our expectations are here, so we probably need to make some adjustments for clarity.
So Epic's moderators are trained somewhat in the rules and the documentation when they need to make sure that if anything's rule breaking or not, and they have access to examples that are allowed or not allowed, and they can use that as a reference to determine if this island they're currently looking at is allowed or not. And if these moderators are going a bit crazy and not doing their job, Epic does monitor their performance, and they will sit them down if they are doing a bad job. And Epic will act accordingly depending on if the moderator is right or wrong, and they will change different things around depending on which is which.
You're never going to get to a system where everybody is always going to make the same decision on something, because it's not, this isn't a math problem. It requires like a high degree of subjective analysis, really. It's when you're thinking about things like, what's a good example? Let's see, like and favorites was the thing that there was a lot of misleading activity around like and favorite, a couple months ago. And we made an update to the rules, which was helpful, but even in enforcement to that rule, it wasn't as clear as like, well, we want people to be able to solicit likes and favorites on their islands because that's how you grow your community, and that's really valuable from a creator perspective. But we don't want players tricked into liking and favoriting an island because they think they're going to be rewarded with something in the game, when we know that there's no way for a player to be rewarded based on the like whether or not they've liked or favorited an island. So then it became, but if they're putting it really close to something and there's a strong implication that if they like and favorite a thing, it'll somehow unlock this mystical, super powerful weapon. But that's not possible within the code of the game. Then we need to make a call there. And then it's, well, how close is too close? And how much are they actually suggesting that? And that's where you'll start to see differences of opinion that becomes really hard to get everyone. Like 100 people could look at the same thing, and maybe 90 of them agree, but 10 of them may not, and say like, well, actually, I thought this one was okay. It wasn't quite over the line for me.
So, like he said, the moderators have a subjective analysis problem where it's hard to tell if something is trying to be misleading or not. Like they said, likes and favorites. How close can you put the little symbol on your map to the weapon that's currently hidden behind a barrier device? This out of view, like where do you draw the line on between it's being misleading or not? There's a very big gray area there. Now, as for misleading content off the platform, like on other platforms, I'm sure you have somebody in mind right now. I go into that later, so I'm just going to hold on that for now. The next question asked is, how do you communicate moderation or whatever to the creator?
I mean, it is in the, like, I push back on it not being in the rule, because like, don't scam players on your island is a rule. I think that whether or not it's intentional, I guess, is maybe what you're talking about. And for a well-meaning creator who sort of like accidentally tripped over the line, they may not know. There are a couple of ways that we've already sort of worked on that, and there's more to come there. I think you mentioned thumbnails that are screenshots of rejections. That's one. we talked a little bit at Unreal Fest last year about expanding sub rules so that when when we are sort of narrowing in on a rule that's fairly broad, we can at least sort of like be a little bit more descriptive about what specifically we're focused on here. I think the other one that we are currently trialing with a small group and are hoping to find a way to bring it at scale is comments, which is basically like hey, this call to action for like a favorite was just too close to this chest or whatever you want, whatever the example may be. There's some challenges there to scale, to be honest, which is our moderators are really good at moderation, and they are not as good about like they're not trained for effectively public speaking or writing things down. So we just need to make sure that they're able to communicate in a way that is like effective and clear. And again, like when you're dealing with a large group at scale, that just takes a little bit more time. So that's the type of thing that we're looking to solve for. But we totally hear you that it's an area where we could do a little bit better on, and I think it is a focus for us and one that we're working on already.
So Epic goes on to say that they have rules in place to show the creators that they're doing something wrong. They also show thumbnails where in the map that they did something wrong. They're also talking about expanding rules into sub-rules, clarify a few things, and Mustard actually goes on to suggest something pretty cool.
It would be helpful, just as a suggestion, even if there are things like that. I mean, the likes and favorites is one that has been an issue for a long time. Now it's going to be favoriting creators and people, doing weird stuff around that. So there are stuff like clarifications that you guys have. Maybe if there was a page connected to terms of service and aren't necessarily, because don't scam players is like such a broad statement of like, well, what is a scam of a player? And then people are going to try and push that. So sometimes if there was clarifications, like don't put a like and favorite or a call to action next to something, like that would probably solve a lot of issues if there was some clarification there. Like don't put it next to a chest, don't put it next, I don't know. Maybe it's getting too specific there. But it might be helpful to have some like a FAQ page or something that's like, this isn't 100% every time going to be like this, but generally this might be a helpful guidance for creators as they're doing stuff.
Basically an FAQ or like a way to players or creators to know if their map is bad or not. They can like see like all the different times it could possibly be an issue. So there's a bit more clarification and a little bit more like less broad, do not scam. Of course that's obviously not that hard to understand, but other cases like thumbnails, what you can put on them, stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff, little things that like you get caught out in island publishing for.
We want communication about where this is making life difficult. Like these are the things you're trying to make a judgment call here, and this doesn't make any sense. I think we rely a lot on our creative relations team to help sort of get input from our creators at large. And last year wasn't great, but we're better now. And I think the goal is to get to a point where it doesn't feel like a mystery what just happened. Like that's sort of the whole goal. We don't win if it's a mystery for you how to get through the thumbnail. Like that's just annoying for everybody.
And I will say, guys, it is much better than it was a year ago. And so thank you for those changes. And I think as it gets better and more clear, it'll just become easier.
Which is very true. The moderation has gone way better in Fortnite, and I think when I publish my maps, it takes a lot less time to get them approved. So there's definitely something they're doing right. But there are also things they are not handling very well, in my opinion, like their stance on AI or copyright, IP, whatever. So we'll get to that later.
It doesn't hurt as much, but you're still bleeding. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
We get it. Like we don't want to sugarcoat this in any way. Like this is, we have a lot of effort going into attempting to dial out ambiguity, but it is a really hard problem. Like I can't count the amount of times we looked at a thumbnail like across like a wide swath of people that are really like deep in trust and safety and looked at it and going, I don't know, could go either way. Like that's not a good feeling when you realize that you've set up a system where there's some ambiguity. So we just try to get more and more specific in our training materials, more and more specific in our guidelines. But at the end of the day, while most creators are like, they just want to do the best job of promoting their map, there's a certain amount of creators that want to be very, very close to the edge and continually want to push against the edge. It makes it challenging.
So like you just said, it's very hard to deal with ambiguity. Now you would think that the solution to this is just adding more rules, but there is a few problems with that, which he talks about literally right now.
What we don't want to do is impose so many rules that it restricts creative freedom either, right? So like we do want to leave things open for, and it's really assume the best of all creators so that they can sort of build whatever they want. But clarity often comes with like really explicit guidelines which can box in creativity. So when we're thinking about making rule changes and things like that, that's one of the things that we really seriously consider, because we don't want to like force everyone down the exact same path.
I think the reality is also like when we launch UEFN like that sort of spring, like when that happened, we're gonna make some commitments here. Like we're gonna pre-moderate every island. Well, that's a big commitment. We're gonna get to a rating system where every, like, no matter your age, you're welcome in the ecosystem. Well, that puts another sort of like interesting like spin on it. And we want from a privacy perspective to be as privacy forward as we humanly can. And those decisions I think are pivotal for the type of ecosystem we want to build long term with creators. But it also makes it really, I don't know, like there's a lot of things that Epic has to learn, like to operate like really well. But the one thing we're trying not to compromise are those principles on the, like we want this to be the best, most predictable ecosystem for all ages to come and have fun.
So Epic believes in a free ecosystem, you know, where people can create what they want to make, and they don't want to limit people too much, which is a good philosophy. Like, you know, that's how you grow an ecosystem with a lot of different ideas inside of it. One issue with it though is that leaving it too open, it does leave it viable to bad actors to abuse it, which is happening all the time right now since UEFN has come out. So there's a really hard thin line you have to like teeter on, where you don't want to be too limiting where people feel like they can't make the stuff they want to make, but you don't want to be too passive where like all the bad actors get to roam free and do whatever they want. In my opinion, I think Epic is still a bit too on the light side of moderation. They have to go a little bit stronger, a little bit more than they are right now. But anyways, the next question was, sometimes people go over the line, but only get a slap on the wrist. At what point do the creators get severe punishment?
It happens all the time. I think, so this year, I think we've issued something like 1,300 creator bans, probably. And that doesn't mean a permanent ban from the platform, but it's part of our sort of repeat offender program where it escalates sort of the more violations you accumulate. And when I say a ban, it's not just, you know, blocks their ability to publish, it also blocks their ability to earn until the ban is over. So the thing that it doesn't necessarily do is keep an island that's in good standing off the platform. So I think sometimes people focus on the fact that, like, I reported this creator and they still have three islands live right now. Like, what is going on? They're clearly a bad actor. When the fact may be that, like, they could very well be suspended from uploading for a month and not realizing revenue. But we don't. That's not something that we like announce because we don't get into specific. We don't want to go around saying, like, with a public, you know, ringing the shame bell, walking down the street.
So this is the part where I probably disagree with Epic a lot. Their philosophy here is that they want to keep the islands up that are doing well because the players like them, but because the creator is banned, obviously the creator will not get money for it. And since they're not getting money, they don't see it necessary to take down the island that people are liking. Now, this is a big problem because if you keep the island up in Discover, the island will be taking players from other islands that could be getting players. You know what I mean? Even if the rule breaker is not getting any money for it, they're still hurting the ecosystem. I think this is a little silly idea. I don't know why Epic are doing it. If the creator is getting banned, the islands they currently have in Discover should also be removed from Discover. If the players are in the map playing it, they can stay on the map or whatever they want, and they can search it up with the island code. But if it should not be in Discover, period. Once they get banned, it should just be removed from Discover. I understand the players like it, but if the creator broke the rules, they need to be banished to the Shadow Realm until it's over. Their islands shouldn't be benefiting from anything, when other islands from creators who are not breaking the rules could be in their spot in Discover where they are currently. It's just my thoughts. And Mustard goes on to mention something about sending a message, I don't know, like Goodfellas style, I don't know.
If there's a pub, I'm not telling you, let's go find the worst offender and parade him on the street, but maybe a public example would send a message, or even not like an individual example. You could say, hey, people that were breaking this rule, we banned 100 of them from receiving.
You're saying in aggregate.
Yeah,
like, just to be like, hey, guys, don't break the rules because we will punish you. And we've already punished 1,300 people, and because they were breaking rules. Versus this is news to me. I've never heard that you guys have punished anybody, and so like that is like maybe that would scare scammers and people from breaking terms of service because they know they're going to lose stuff or their island might get taken down or whatever.
So yeah, Mustard just saying that you know how like in Minecraft Hypixel of all the examples, they have like this watchdog like notification that pops up in chat that says how many people were banned or whatever, something like that scare people off from hacking. Like, you know what I mean? Like kind of like that, where it's a bit performative and it makes like, you know, we've banned this many people, don't you cheat and don't you rule break or whatever. It's just a way to make sure that people know that there's a possibility that if they do bad things, they are going to be banned for it.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I know we haven't talked too publicly about enforcement before, but it may be. I'll take it back to the team. I think it's definitely something worth considering.
Because like the vast majority of creators like really want to build a business. They really want to do this, and we're very focused on removing the, like, we see it as noise almost in the system. Like we want to dial out the noise in the system, so like the people that make islands that players want to play can thrive, right? And a lot of this, like a lot of the, you know, when Dan talked about like 1,300 sort of actions we've taken, like it's noise. Like they occupy spaces in Discover, and like before like the island is removed, and like there's a ton of noise that just happens because of this. Human nature is is like if there's a commercial endeavor, then there's just a certain breed that wants to see if they can exploit it, right? So our job is to dial it out, but not make too big a deal about it.
So Epic doesn't really want to make a big deal about banning people, and they don't want to parade them in the streets or whatever, which is fine, it makes sense. The next question sort of went like this. The islands that are from the banned creators that are currently still in Discover take real estate from honest creators. Is there any thought to that?
Like, yes, we want to, like, we don't want the creator to benefit, but we also don't want to punish players who maybe like those islands already have audiences. And so if you're a player and that's your favorite island, like you may not really care what the creator did. It's like if the experience that you're used to is a conforming island, us just taking that away from you is going to create like a pretty uncomfortable experience.
So I gotta be real here. There are ways to work around it, like I said earlier. You don't have to kick all the players off the map immediately. You just have to get it out of Discover. All that really matters is it's placed currently in Discover, and it's taking players away from maps that are honest and aren't breaking the rules. And there are ways you can do that without, you know, disrupting the player's current experience.
If you take down one island, the players will just find the next one that was super close to it. I mean, there's so many duplicates of the same types of game modes and genres. And
so Mustard goes on to make the Dutch Vanderland point where the players will just find another game to play.
When I'm gone, they'll just find another monster.
And he's right. It's hard to deal with them because there's always so many of them. And usually, the copyright rule breaking maps, they're really simple and they're really easy to just make thousands of. And since they use this whole throwing everything onto the wall until it sticks method, eventually one breaks through, and eventually we'll get into, like, you know, Discover and get up the ranks and everything by being dishonest and misleading. And this philosophy where they think that because the players are playing it, they don't want to remove the map because the people playing it like it. I think it's just baloney because, like he said, the players will just move on to another map if it gets removed. It doesn't really matter to them. I'm sure people playing the Bombardido, Crocodilo, or whatever it's called, box PvP, doesn't really care which version they play.
Like
it's valid feedback, yeah, like no doubt. Like
yeah. Like 100 discovery positions.
I think it's solid, like what you're saying. Yeah. Like, we'll take it back and think about it. I think the truth is we use every opportunity to reevaluate our own thinking and second guess ourselves, like in a good way. Like I think the severity matrix, for example, we've revised a bunch of times because what seemed obvious until we started operating it, like what does it really mean if you put swear words in, right? Like sort of like and you're not truthful about your rating or whatever it is. Like it's really easy to think about what that should be until you see an island go, like that seems like an honest mistake that just happened.
Oh yeah, again, like, you know, not everyone who breaks the rules in Fortnite Creative is intentionally breaking the rules. There's a lot of people who are honest and they just make a silly mistake, or they don't know how the rules are clearly laid out, haven't, you know, fully understood what is wrong and what they should be doing. There's a lot of different times where that can happen. The next question that Mustard brought up was, what if there was an honest mistake that isn't malice? Do you ever communicate with creators? What do you do before you ban the creator?
Yeah, we do want to make sure that we're not creating like a multi-class system where some people are getting tipped off on a rule and other people are not. Like, we want to enforce uniformly. But I think, you know, as far as finding ways to better communicate proactively when we think stuff is maybe on the line, like maybe there's more that we could do there, and we can think about that.
Yeah, I personally think like a pre-mod, like if you have questions that you can get essentially some assets moderated without submitting them for publishing. I think like there are legitimate like times where you would say, like, I'm not quite sure if this, I really want to go with this thumbnail, but I have a concern that they're going to see it as X, Y, and Z. Like, can I just submit it for pre-approval? But I don't want to be part of my publishing package or something like that. Like, honestly, I don't know what's actually possible now because I know we've been talking about doing exactly that. But that's part of it is like opening a dialogue, but not on live. Like once it gets to live, I think we have urgency to correct because it's player facing, right? If we can keep the dialogue sort of behind the scenes, then that would benefit creators and that would benefit us, right?
So yeah, he goes on to talk about some like pre-approved feature or something like that, where you'll be able to submit assets that you don't know that are provable to Epic to see if it is. So you can have things tested without needing the island to be, like, you know, taken down or whatever because of that one little asset.
I might be announcing a feature, but oh well.
Heard it here first, guys.
We're working on a publishing hold essentially of saying, hey, I want to publish on this date. So you can submit it for publishing, it holds, it doesn't go live, but you would have time to iterate on that and get it so you know it got through the queue, and you can sort of flip a switch to go out to be more predictable, right? So right now you sort of submit and it just goes out when it's ready.
So yeah, publishing hold or scheduling when you want to publish a map is very nice. I very much would like that. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the community about a priority or honor system for creators. So Mustard went on to ask, are there any plans for a priority system?
I think we talked about that a little bit at the top, right, with that thumbnail example. I think where we would be more comfortable going is relying on historical decisioning and using that to like really focus the scope of a review for an update. So like, you are a good creator, you've submitted the same asset or the same island package with 99% the same assets every time. Like, we feel really good about those 99% things. We're not going to spend too much time looking at those. We'll just focus on the 1% new content. Like, I think that is an area that we'd be comfortable with more than we don't want people feeling like they need to pay for like the premium experience with moderation. Like, ideally everybody gets the same premium experience and everybody's happy with the outcome.
Now, honestly, I would like a priority system. Like, not like something you pay for or whatever, but something that like you get knighted, I guess, by Epic Games for being like, you're a trusted creator. So if you're a trusted creator, you get like benefits or something like that. So publishing in the ecosystem doesn't always just feel like a dice roll for even the highest top creators out there. But then again, I don't think it's completely necessary because you have pay with a creator now, and it's not that big of a deal if we don't have it. Anywho, Mustard goes on to ask, is I.A.R.C Epic or somebody else, and how do you get consistency with rating?
We go about this in a couple ways. The I.A.R.C survey itself is not something that we designed. We've implemented the survey through I.A.R.C. And so, for those who are maybe less familiar, though I imagine everybody who's paying attention to this right now has gone through it, you answer a whole bunch of questions about your experience, and at the end, it gives you a bunch of regional ratings. When we have no sort of input over that. That's I.A.R.C's determination. What we do is when you submit your island through publishing, we'll tag things that may suggest like a particular age rating, but we're not going line by line through your answers to the survey and saying like, oh, this doesn't really match up with what I'm experiencing.
So yeah, like I.A.R.C is run not by Epic, and it's run by I.A.R.C. But Epic only looks for inconsistencies in the rating to what your map describes and what it plays like. So like they said, Deathmatch and E probably won't go together, and it's probably not right. Something like that. Now, Mustard goes on to ask the question, is Epic ever going to allow more mature experiences, like with blood? Ooh.
Epic's ultimate goal of seeding sort of like a part of an interoperable metaverse is all ratings should be applicable, right? Does that apply to Fortnite itself? Like, that's a different question, right? But I think overall, as we think about what ecosystem are we designing, it has to be able to flex to all age ratings. Like, that's sort of the base assumption. Like, what is that practical, and how does that work across every platform and what have we? Like, there's a whole other consideration here, but like spiritually, yeah, like that's what we aspire to, is that any piece of content can find its home, and you and your friends like can choose like what is the age appropriate like content you want to see.
So yeah, it's good to know that Epic are open to the idea of adding more mature experiences. I would personally love to have more like at least 16 rated games, because it's so annoying where I can't even say hell in some dialogue. Anyways, next up is a pretty spicy one. What is Epic's stances on AI?
Oh yeah, I think from our perspective for moderation, thumbnails, like we don't really care what tool you use to make your thumbnails. What we care about is whether or not it's compliant with our rules. And I think to some degree, AI is going to become more and more difficult to detect. It's not going to stand out as a unique thing. It's just going to be another tool that people are using to create things. So trying to like look for that specifically is going to become increasingly difficult, to the point where it's probably going to become unenforceable.
So I think the main problem with AI in Fortnite is, first, AI can really easily replicate copyrighted IP, like just like that. And also the AI that's also misleading, because that's also a rule. You can't be misleading in your Fortnite map, so the thumbnail has to be not misleading. And usually 9 times out of 10, AI makes something look very misleading and nothing like what the actual map looks like.
I don't know, 30 years as an engine like maker, we have always strived to give people access to the best tools to make the best like content, because that's the way best games are made, is just tools. I think AI, like there's a lot of controversial aspects of AI, but what's unassailable is that it's revolutionizing a lot of workflows, like to make them incredibly powerful. But I think for me, if you can detect an AI thumbnail, then it also means like it has a particular look that if you can stand apart with an artist that has a distinct style, you're still standing out against a like what is like in truth like a lot of very generic looking AI generated art, right? So I don't think, like internally at least, do we feel like we need to start making Fortnite outfits using AI models? No. Like we believe that what we're like the approach we have taken embraces technology, but sort of puts humans in the center of it still, because that's how you get the best results.
So Epic goes on to make a very good point that AI is evolving to make everything very more efficient. I even joked about it in my April Fool's post I did. I said that they're releasing a button where you can just instantly generate a Fortnite creative map, and probably in like about 30 years, that's probably going to be how it is. Maybe even shorter than that. But again, like he said, usually if you don't use AI and use humans, you usually end up with a way better result. And usually in the end of the day, you will stand out more over the AI, which is very true.
It's not a simple line to draw. No, there's no doubt about it. I think we rely on like that same art could have been drawn by an artist of the same caricatures that what we have to look at is just like what are the content guidelines and not how were they generated. Because like, at the end of the day, that's really what matters. We've always had violative content. It's not like it's changed just because you can do an AI thumbnail. Like coins on thumbnails were a thing before AI too.
And he makes a good point. I mean, before and after AI, all of these issues are still here and there's still violations going on. Yes, AI is kind of annoying and it looks really bad and it undermines creators, but what are you going to do about it, really? I don't know. You could ban it outright, but then again, Epic probably won't ever do that. Because like he said, it's less not about the tools you use, but what you make with the tools. That's the issue. After this, we're getting into the next juicy question. What's Epic's stance on IP theft?
The framing of what is allowed and what isn't allowed with IP is like, I'm just chuckling a little bit because it's pretty straightforward. Like, don't use other people's IP if you don't have their permission to use it, right? That is the standard. If you use somebody else's IP without their permission, then you're subject to things like DMCA claims, which carry pretty significant ramifications. So I'm not sure, I don't know if we've talked about this before or not, but we do proactively moderate for IP where we have an agreement in place with rights holders. So there are a couple of big companies that we work with. They provide us with a whole bunch of assets which we use to train ML models and then review things on uploads so that we can automatically catch IP infringement. But until we've received signal from the rights holder themselves, it's not something that we proactively moderate for.
So Epic's whole philosophy is that if the IP holders don't really care, it's not really their problem, which I don't think is a good way to go about it, because in the rules, IP infringement isn't there, and IP infringement happens all the time. So I don't understand why Epic doesn't feel the need to enforce it.
The DMCA is not a perfect system for how to govern IP infringement. It is a system we have and the system we have to live with, and we do our very best to action fast and be fair and have a really easy way that people can submit for infringement. Same with the unoriginal content reporting that we spun up not too long ago. But it does rely on, like, we don't know if somebody went and there was a TurboTax island. Like, we don't know if Intuit went and made a deal with that creator to make the TurboTax island, right?
So again, I've said this a lot of times in the past in a lot of other videos, but Epic, there is ways to solve this, okay? You can detect IP infringement using different things like common sense, that Seth MacFarlane himself didn't give this random creator the IP of Family Guy to use inside of his box fight map. And there's also other ways to know that you own the rights, like using attributions or something like that. So if somebody doesn't have the attribution that they have the rights and license to use the Family Guy IP, they shouldn't have the island up that uses the Family Guy IP, you know what I mean? Anyways, this next question, Mustard put it very nicely, so I'll let him say it.
It's tough when you see some IP violator being shown on Homebar that has, I don't know, Godzilla up on the thumbnail. You know they don't have permission for that, and they don't get punished, they don't get removed, because Legendary doesn't know that some random island on Fortnite is violating their IP, and so they don't follow DMCA, and they're getting thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars doing this, while people that are following the terms of service are getting overshadowed by people that are playing off of IPs that the player base cares about. They want to go and play Godzilla Island or a Spider-Man experience or something, and it is hard. It's just hard to sit back and see that without when it's a clear violation.
We understand that.
Which is a great point. I mean, how does the IP owner, a ginormous company, know that this tiny little Fortnite map, which, let's be honest, is a pretty small subset of the great entertainment industry, how do they know? And honestly, in my opinion, I think it's up to Epic to decide that and take down stuff that could possibly be infringing.
With all IP that they said, hey, do your best to weed out the things that are not licensed, because we haven't licensed with anyone unless we tell you to that we did. Yeah, but it's not like IP is very widespread, springs up really fast. Godzilla is certainly a known IP. Majority of IP that have resonance right now, are not. They go to spring up really fast, but I think even more so, like Godzilla is an example you mentioned, but I think between creators in general, like sort of the when you feel like people are pushing up against or like sort of deliberately siphoning off your traffic with misleading content or whatever, like all those things are things that we're trying to develop better and better safeguards for.
So it's good to know that Epic are trying to prevent it. IP is a big mess, but anyways, on to the next question, which was, how do Epic deal with stuff off platform, like creators who promote their islands on socials in misleading ways? And there's one pretty topical creator that might come to mind right now.
So there's two different tracks that we take on this. One, like, we have a team that actually does monitor for this sort of stuff, like misleading off-platform promotion specifically. They've issued 20,000 DMCAs against videos this year alone. Like it is a team that is like kind of prolific output, to be honest. Like anytime I meet with them and sort of go through, and they're watching all these videos, so like soon they'll be one with the algorithm, I think. But it is a bit of a whack-a-mole, and we do want to make sure that when we are taking down that type of content, that it is truly misleading content. Like there's no world in which what they are promising in their video can happen in the island. At the same time, we're also looking at the islands. Like, so is the island itself sort of leaning into this sort of misleading promotion, or is the island non-violative? And a lot of the time, like by the letter of the law, the island is pretty innocuous. There's not really much happening there. And so then the challenge becomes, okay, well, for the off-platform, are the off-platform creator and the on-platform creator the same person? Like, do we know definitively that they're the same person? If the answer is yes, then we can action the creator on platform. But if it's not, we don't want to punish a creator because of a misleading video, because like you can imagine a world where like somebody who has it out for you is creating a misleading video promoting your island in the hopes that you get punished for it.
Anyways, it's good to know that there's been 20,000 DMCAs given to all these creators doing this, because it's not good. But anyways, this video is almost over. There's only one last question, and it's, is there anything that we can look forward to?
I'll say, like from a roadmap perspective, there are a few things that we could talk about. One, we are working to automatically detect and prevent creators from uploading thumbnails that already exist on platforms. So just stop them at the source rather than waiting for folks to have to report it through our own original promotional asset reporting process. Second thing, Sax, you sort of talked about this one a little bit, sort of suggesting to creators within Creator Portal or within UEFN when an asset, whether it's sort of an in-game asset or metadata, may be violative. So that would work like, you upload a thumbnail, we run our ML classifier against it, and it detects coins, and you see a message in Creator Portal that says like, hey, looks like this may violate our rules. You should check this out before submitting. And then moderator comments, which I talked about at the beginning. Like we are really trying to figure out a way to bring that to scale. Least confident will land this year just because of some of the nuances there, but it is something that we're really focused on trying to make work to our standard.
So Epic, as a final little hurrah of the stream, they announced 3 new things they'll be adding to the moderation. First thing is that they're working on to automatically detect if you're uploading the same thumbnail as somebody else, which is very nice. So it'll stop people from copying your thumbnail in Discover by stealing it. The next one is that they're going to also add a feature where you can, it says like, hey bro, this asset might possibly be a violated asset. You probably don't want it in your map. So creators can have a bit of they can expect that their map might be taken down. So a little helpful little feature there. And then lastly, moderator comments when your island gets removed. So instead of having like automated stuff that's like really very vague, you get a comment straight from the moderator themselves saying what your island is wrong, and like, give a personalized comment for your island, which is very helpful because then you'll know what is wrong. So in conclusion, this stream was another pretty good one. There's some things I disagree with Epic with, like IP, but there's some things that I also kind of do agree with, like their stance on AI. I mean, like, what can you do about it? And there's a bunch of different nuances and stuff like that. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown. It's right now 2 a.m. right now. But anyways, remember to like, subscribe, use my code in the Fortnite shop, and thank you to all the members of the channel. And remember to watch all of these videos for more of my content. That's about it. I'll see you all around.